everyone, and welcome. My name is Samantha, and I'm one of the interns at the School-Based Health Center. The SBHC is a partnership between Maine Township High School of District 207 and Advocate Medical Group, created to support the physical and emotional health of students at Maine West, Maine East, Maine South, and Frost Academy. The SBHC offers medical and mental health services to students who might not otherwise have easy access to care. It's a comprehensive, affordable, and confidential health center right at school, designed to be teen-friendly and accessible. It's a part of a district-wide effort to make healthcare easier for students. Today, we are joined here by our special guest, Daniel Migler. Daniel is the mental health advisor for Paws for Patrick, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving youth mental health through emotional support animals. Daniel has been working in the mental health field since 1999, with experience ranging from group homes and hospitals to private practices and most notably, schools. He's also Maine South alumni, go Hawks, and we're so thrilled to have him here to talk about the powerful connection between animals and healing. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for the opportunity.
Yes, we're so excited to have this discussion. Well, you've been supporting young people through mental health challenges for quite a while now. What first inspired you to get into this field?
Well, like most therapists, I have a long family history of mental health issues in my own family. But
Mm.
in addition, my original goal when I was in college was to get into politics. But after working on a couple campaigns, I was like, this is kind of gross. Nobody's really interested in helping people. They all just want to see who's sitting next to who at a dinner. So I ended up calling up a bunch of nonprofits before I graduated. And I got to this place called the Center for Violence Interruption. And they needed a schools trainer. So I took that job and I fell in love with direct service with kids. But I wanted to make more than $19,000 a year. So they said, you probably better go back to school and become a social worker. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. And then that job has taken me to a bunch of different settings and I've learned so much along the way.
No, yeah, that's awesome. You've clearly worked in a variety of settings, as I've said before. With such a diverse background in mental health, how has your perspective evolved when it comes to helping young people?
You know, what's funny is the older you get, the more you realize you don't know.
Mm.
And early on, I guess I thought my job was to work with people and teach them skills. But as time's gone by, I've realized that I do my best work when I'm there learning from my clients. When I'm, speaking to them and finding out what they know, it shows them that I really respect them and genuinely admire them. And when they can see that, I think it helps them to value themselves a little bit more. Sorry, I couldn't hear what the question was there. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know. Oh, there we are.
Hi.
There we are. Now I hear it back. So,
What was it about Pause for Patrick's mission that really resonated with you and made you want to be a part of their team?
well, Patrick Romer was actually my student. So I worked with the Romer family from when Patrick was a freshman through his senior year. And we had a lot of adventures and ups and downs. Patrick's struggle with mental health went from before he got to high school. And so his junior year was a really good year and we were connected. But even during those times, there were days when he would come down to my office and he was so stressed out, he just couldn't speak. And all he really wanted in those days was to go home and be with his dog, Cece. Unfortunately, on the very first day of senior year, Cece died and she was only 6 years old. So it was really shocking. And the anguish on Patrick's face is something that I will never forget. And he did his best to kind of adjust and move on without having that resiliency factor of his dog. His family tried everything they could. They had other animals and they got a dog named Indy, but the relationship just wasn't the same as the relationship he had with Cece.
Mm.
That year was the COVID year. And actually, going into COVID, Patrick was doing really pretty well. And even throughout most of COVID, he organized a pet Olympics for his family and they were having a really great time. But then he had one really bad day, and Patrick died by suicide in May of 2020. And that was devastating, obviously, for all of us who loved him. And so when his family decided that they wanted to do something to try to honor Patrick's legacy, and they gave me the opportunity to be involved, you can imagine that it was something I really jumped at, to be able
Mhm.
to take that pain of that loss and to turn it into something positive and powerful.
I know that's amazing. It's great that you could make or you could find such good out of such an awful situation. Yeah. Um, how do you think your role as a mental health advisor for Pause for Patrick shaped your understanding of mental health care?
Well, Again, it's something that every time at Foster Patrick, I interact with someone and I see the impact that we can make by just helping them to have access to their animal. One of the things we want to do at Foster Patrick is help reduce the stigma. And what's fun is when people are talking about their animals, they light up. And you can see that talking about mental health doesn't have to be something that's really negative because everyone has mental health. It's just like physical health. But we only think about mental health when we're talking about a person with a mental health disability.
Mhm.
So when we realize when people start talking about their animals, they're able to say whether they have ever been diagnosed with anything. Everyone could talk about how being with their animal helps them to feel better, helps them to be more excited about life. And so I love the impact that working with Paws for Patrick has about helping people to open up that topic of conversation.
Well, as we said before, Paws for Patrick was created in memory of Patrick Romer. Um, how has his legacy lived on through this organization?
Well, again, it's Patrick's love of animals and what he needed more than anything, because you can have the best therapist in the world, but your therapist isn't going to be there for you at 3 in the morning. But your dog, your cat, your cockatiel, whatever it is, they can be there. And that's what Patrick would, he would just want everyone to be able to have access to what helped them the best. Animals aren't for everyone. For Patrick, another thing that was really beneficial was working out and exercise. But there were a lot of organizations that helped promote that. So we looked around to see was there anybody else that was really working in the emotional support animals space. And we didn't find any other organizations that were doing that. So allowing us to have a mission that really helps to provide people with something that Patrick benefited from so much is really helping his legacy to stay alive.
Mhm. What do you think? I mean, we kind of discussed this with the previous question, but what makes Pause for Patrick different from other mental health organizations?
I mean, I think there's a lot of mental health organizations that try to connect people to resources. But again, there isn't anyone that's focusing as specifically on emotional support animals. We also, for the Lake County area, we have a therapy dog team that takes therapy dogs out to visit schools, hospitals, partial hospitalization programs, and treatment centers and things like that. But nationally, and we've actually helped people in all 50 states by connecting them to be able to help reimburse them if they adopt an animal from a shelter or if they need an emotional support animal letter so they can live with their animal in no pet housing, or they don't have to pay pet fees or a pet deposit. So it's been fantastic to be able to do that. And we're also going to be hoping to develop our program to get more facility dogs into schools, hospitals, and other things like that. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about facility dogs and what they do for people.
Yeah, what exactly do facility dogs do for people? I wanted to,
Yeah. Well, so people have a lot of confusion, even therapists, about what is, there's all these different terms. Like there's an ESA, a therapy dog, a facility dog, and a service animal. So when we think, what is an ESA? Well, an ESA is a companion animal that just being in the presence of it can help a person with emotional health disability to have a decrease in the intensity, frequency, or duration of their symptoms. An ESA doesn't have to be trained in any way. It could be a tarantula, it could be a fish, it could be a peacock. It just
Mhm.
means that when you're around it, you feel better. A
Uh-huh.
therapy dog is a kind of animal that is taken out into the community, or it could be some people see there are therapy horses. There are other kinds of animals that can be therapy animals. And these animals are trained to interact with people and be non reactive. So when a
Mm.
therapy dog is working, it can't be playing with other dogs. It has to just be focusing on the people that are petting it and doing things with it. Therapy dogs can only work about an hour a day and have to work about every other day because all of that interaction with people can be a little bit exhausting for them. A facility dog is a therapy dog that stays at one facility. So with schools, a lot of times we'll have a facility dog or hospitals that they're always there. Even the Lake County Courthouse has one. And for people, we don't think about all the things that happen at a courthouse, but for imagine jurors who have to look at a particularly grisly trial and see evidence of a murder. Well, bringing that facility dog in helps all those jurors to decompress, to reduce some of that cortisol tension that they're feeling. Or again, the people who work at the court building. This can be the same thing true with a school. We think about the benefit that happens to the students who get to interact with that facility animal, but actually all the teachers and the support staff, the custodians, everybody who is around that animal reduces their stress. So those facility dogs can work longer. The final category of animal is a service animal. And we often think about like a seeing eye dog for a blind person.
Mm.
A service animal has the highest level of training. It usually takes about ten to $15,000 to train a service animal, and their focus, instead of being outward on the people they might interact with, is actually just on one individual, the individual that has the disability. and they have specific training to help remediate some of the symptoms. So for a person who might have diabetes, they might be able to sniff when their blood sugar is getting low and alert them. If they have seizures, they might be able to lick their face or alert other people if a seizure happens. There are actually mental health service animals that are trained if a person is having PTSD symptoms or anxiety to lick their face or do things like that. So this is kind of the range of different kind of helping animals in the mental health field.
Yeah, there's clearly a huge variety.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you were in all 50 states.
Mhm.
That's huge. How do you manage to keep services free while also being able to reach so many people?
And that's really about fundraising. And
Mm.
so we're online. People can go to our website, pawsforpatrick.org, and find out more about that. And we have events, and we'll, I think, talk about some of them later. We have a gala that's actually coming up on this Friday. And then we have a golf outing in the summertime where we just reach out to people to help support our mission. Because again, that idea of getting that emotional support animal letter, we're paying the bill for someone to be able to meet with a therapist and then write that letter for them, or we're reimbursing them for the adoption fees. But actually, it's an incredibly cost effective way of helping people. The research says that people, even just living with animals, people who don't even have a mental health disability, they have lower incidence of hypertension, stress, stroke. They have less loneliness, which we know is a major epidemic all throughout our country. So someday I think insurance companies might be giving you a bonus if you have a pet because of how beneficial they are to all of your physical health. So when we do the math on, $100 to $150 donation to Paws for Patrick can really go a long way in helping lots of different families to be, certified to be able that they have an emotional support animal and to make their life a little bit more comfortable.
Mhm. Can you explain how specifically ESAs help those struggling with anxiety, depression, or any other mental health challenges?
Sure. Last night, I wrote an emotional support animal letter for a woman. And she was talking, I said, tell me a little bit about your mental health journey and how animals intersect with that. And she said that after her mother died, she was experiencing a great deal of grief. And it was making it hard for her to get up and function and do her daily life. She was getting extra irritable and would snap at people in her world. And Kibbles, her dog, when she's around Kibbles, she just feels more calm and more relaxed. She's better able to roll with the punches. It's increased her capacity for handling new stress. By getting out with Kibbles and giving Kibbles a walk, it helps her to be active. In addition, at night, sometimes if she's having trouble sleeping, just having Kibbles in her bed and stroking Kibbles' fur when she's feeling stress and anxiety can slow her heart rate. The research from Dr. Janet Oy Gerlach of the University of Toledo says that sometimes even just staring in the eyes of your dog or your cat can increase your expression of oxytocin. And oxytocin is sort of this love hormone that causes connection, and it can decrease our levels of cortisol, which is that stress hormone. So just again, these are some of the ways for different people that being around their animal can improve their mental health.
Well, you've already mentioned a specific story, but have you witnessed any other events where an ESA has made a significant impact on a young person's life?
Oh gosh, I can think of so many. I think one of the first, stories that comes to mind is actually not necessarily a young person, but a woman she was living in a homeless shelter, and she wouldn't leave because she didn't want to live anywhere without her animal. And I think some people don't realize that, again, if you can't live in no pet housing, sometimes it can be really hard for a person to find an apartment that they can afford. Right now, there's a real crunch for people to be able to find apartments in different kinds of housing. So for her, me writing her an emotional support animal letter, which allowed her to move into, the housing of her choice, it opened up her horizons. And again, she wanted to live with her grandmother, but again, that how the community was saying, "Oh, no pets in here." Well, they can't say that if they follow the federal guidelines. So that can really help. In addition, for a lot of students that I've worked with autism, where communication is a major barrier for them, that animal has that natural empathy, which can connect. And there are so many, as I say, dogs make the best therapists because they know how to just listen and be with you and reflect that empathy. So when it's hard to put your thoughts into words, that ability to just sit and be and connect has been incredibly profound for a lot of people.
What do you think someone should consider before getting an ESA?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't be considering an ESA if we don't like animals. So, I know, as much as I'm touting their benefits, if it's not an animal person, we should think of, okay, what else could that person do, from exercise and other things like that. But secondly, if you're going off to college and your animal has always really helped you, yes, could you have an ESA in your dorm? But is it going to be good to be in your dorm if it's a St. Bernard? Probably not. So we should think about what we want to make a sustainable pairing that's going to work for both the client and for the animal. In addition, we do have to realize that unless you're getting a parrot or some sort of Galapagos tortoise, that you're probably going to outlive your animal. So when we think of mental health as risk factors and resiliency factors, and eventually if we're going to lose that resiliency factor, what's going to be our plan when our animal does get sick? Do we have the financial resources to take care of that animal? At Paws for Patrick, we never say no to people, but we might say not yet. So based on the life that you're living, if you don't have the time and energy to take care of a dog, maybe a cat could be better for you. Maybe a chinchilla, maybe a hamster. So what's the kind of animal? What do we need? And is that going to really fit in with our lifestyle? And
Mhm.
again, it's interesting from Dr. Oygerlach's research. This really blew me away. But cats are actually slightly more effective than dogs in remediating against depression. So for
Mhm.
people who are dealing with those depressive type symptoms, they might want to consider a cat.
So you guys don't, it's not just dogs that you guys handle, it's all types of animals,
Yeah,
correct?
so I've written letters for turtles, for chinchillas, for rabbits. So again, particularly when people are thinking about college, they are going to need a letter to have any kind of animal in their dorm
Yeah.
room, and so that's why I've written all these interesting letters for lizards, for anything that might help a person to just not feel as lonely when they come back to their dorm room.
Same. What was like the most interesting letter you've written?
The most interesting letter I ever wrote was for a woman who had 7 cats.
Oh, wow.
And so eh, typically an emotional support animal letter would only apply to one animal because we'd say,
Yeah.
okay, there has to be a connection between the disability and the benefit they're getting from the animal. And
Mhm.
so ethically, as a therapist, I can't write a letter that just because she doesn't want to pay pet fees. Well, if only one of those animals was necessary, but she was able to provide a rationale for the different personalities of her different cats and how each different cat. So one cat was super playful and would help her get up in the morning, and another cat was really great at being stroked and would help her when she was feeling anxious. So it was amazing that each one of these things truly did correspond with a symptom that she was experiencing and the way that that cat could help her out. We had another woman who was in her that we helped early out who was in her 80s, and she said she would like to have a dog, but it was important to her that her dog had her same zodiac sign. So she was a Libra and she wanted her dog to be a Libra. So again, we
Mhm.
didn't say no, we say not yet, and we just work with the people. And that's one of the things as a social worker. We try to believe in self-determination of clients, and we don't decide anything for them. We just try to
Mhm.
say, how can we match resources to your needs?
You want to support them as best as you can.
Yeah, with their own choices involved.
You. Um, what advice? Okay, this is a little off topic, but
It's okay.
what advice do you have for parents, teachers, or friends who see a young person struggling but aren't necessarily sure what to do?
The biggest key is just getting to know that person as a person. And kind of as I said, if you can go to that person and actually ask them for some advice. So everybody is an expert in something that they're interested in. So if I go to a student and they're into skateboarding and I don't know a lot about it, I see them walking around with a skateboard. If I just say, "Hey, pal, how you doing? You want to talk to me about your feelings?" They're like, "No, weirdo, I don't know you." But if I'm coming up to them or if they've got a shirt with a band on it, and I ask them questions about that band, and I'm really genuinely and sincerely trying to learn about them and about their life, people are only going to open up to you if they trust you. But they are not going to respect and trust are not just given; they have to be earned. And you earn it through really truly caring about that person, not just on the day when they're looking sad, but on every day, getting to know those people and connecting with them.
Um, how can people support your mission?
So, I mean, there are really obviously we like dollars. So if people have extra money to give out, that's amazing. But also, two things: is just spreading the word that Paws for Patrick exists. We're a
Mhm.
relatively young organization, so not a lot of people know about us. So if anyone knows someone, our mission is specifically for people 30 and younger, or for parents who have children who are under 30. So if anybody knows someone who's 30 and younger who has an emotional health disability who could benefit from an emotional support animal, tell them to go to the website Paws for Patrick and just share also the idea that emotional support animals have become a bit of a punchline lately. If people are going through a stressful day, they might say, "Oh, I'm going to go home and hang out with my emotional support
Mhm.
animal." It's like with anything mental health related, we have to stand up and say, that makes me uncomfortable because actually animals are awesome and they make me feel really good. So people kind of standing up and sharing how animals have helped them.
Mhm. No, yeah, I've noticed like a lot of people just tend to joke about and really any type of situation or anything having to do with mental health. And I feel like that kind of devalues the whole concept on its own. It's really unfortunate, but um, Well, all right. Now that we've heard a bit about Daniel's background and Pause for Patrick's mission, we want to hear from you guys. If you have any questions for Daniel, whether about mental health, emotional support animals, or anything we've discussed, feel free to drop them in the chat. Oh, well, got a question. What do you think Pause for Patrick contributes to improving mental health?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, when we think about public health, we think about just this idea that mental health, as we're talking about, is stigmatized. And so, this idea that Paws for Patrick is helping people to talk about mental health in a way that is more comfortable. In fact, we even find that when we bring those therapy dogs to a school, when a bunch of people are standing around and they're petting the dog, and they're not actually even looking each other in the eye, they're just all petting the dog, stories start coming out and the way that animals impact people, and it makes it more comfortable to discuss. So I think, again, the idea of people living with animals goes as far back as we've had humans. We've had domestication of animals and human beings living alongside their animals. So we can do that in a way that allows people to talk about mental health and to say how it affects them in a way that doesn't feel embarrassing or weird.
From Nikki Pham, how do you determine which individuals would benefit most from the from the programs Pause for Patrick offers?
Yeah, we really try to focus because there's been so many people reaching out to us saying, like, well, will you provide animals for first responders? And will you provide animals for military veterans? And we realize that there are already a lot of groups that are focusing on first responders or military veterans. So, because we want to honor the legacy of Patrick, him being a young person, we really did want to focus on young people. And again, we define young people as 30 and younger or parents. And so it's not to say we don't care about first responders or military veterans or whatnot, but we have to make sure our mission doesn't crawl everywhere. When we think about where we're visiting with our therapy dog program, we really try to prioritize treatment programs so that the people who are benefiting may be people who have emotional health disabilities, who can, especially if they can't have an animal themselves, that they get that little bit of joy that comes when a dog comes to visit with them.
What do you think Patrick would say about the work Pause for Patrick is doing right now?
Patrick would be delighted with the work that's going on, but he would be horrified with his name being out there just because he was such a shy and private person. And we're just so, so some of his friends would say, they would say, I remember them saying that same thing of Patrick would hate all this publicity about himself. But we said, okay, well, we're taking that right away from Patrick now because the mission's too important.
Yeah.
But every person that we get these thank you letters from about how Paws for Patrick has helped their lives, he would be really stoked that other people were being able to have a better life because of that. So he would be happy about that. He'd be so proud of his mom and his dad and his brother and his sister who are involved with the organization. I know Mags, particularly his younger sister, who's now in college. He was always rooting for her and super proud of her. And he really looked up to Ben, his older brother, and how Ben has done so much for the organization as well. So it's been, I mean, the Romer family is so incredible. So I think Patrick would just be really, really proud of his family and how they've stepped up to make this organization a reality to help so many other people.
What are some challenges you face when advocating for the mission of Pause for Patrick?
Again, I think it's overcoming misconceptions and stigma around emotional support animals. People will say there are people who abuse the system, and you can go on Amazon and you can just buy a vest that you put on your dog, and then you can take your dog around and try to take it to Target or somewhere else. And the reality is the laws about emotional support animals only apply to a person's home and dwelling. So the only animals that have the right to be out in public are service animals. Even therapy dogs that have that higher level of training don't have the right to be out in any place where they're not invited. So people who are saying, well, I want to bring my emotional support animal with me wherever they go, that is not a legal right that they have. And so sometimes I think people get annoyed by that. So we're pushing against the stigma of misunderstanding. I like to think about access to animals like access to music. Music helps so many people. But no matter how much music helps you, you don't really have the right to have a boombox on your shoulder and be blasting it out at everyone. Similarly, when we have an animal, we should be, taking care that we're making sure our animal's being respectful and we're not bothering other people with it. So I hope if all people understand that having that animal is not a problem. Even therapists sometimes have a misconception that there could be a liability problem for them in writing an emotional support animal letter. And the reality is, as a therapist, if I encourage someone to go get exercise and they're jogging and they fall off the treadmill, I'm not responsible for that. I've encouraged them to do that. So with an emotional support animal letter, all I'm saying when I write that letter is, in my clinical opinion, this person A has an emotional health disability, which may be benefited by an animal. So that person may never have had an animal before. We don't have to know that it works. I just have to have a reasonable belief that that animal might help them. And if they do, all I'm saying is that they have an animal and that they may benefit. And if they get that animal, it will may help reduce the intensity, frequency, or duration of symptoms. So as long as I have that, that's all I'm saying. So if somebody has their emotional support peacock and it pecks somebody in the face, I am not liable for that. So I hope all therapists will be open in writing letters for people, when that opportunity arises for them.
Because from Kayla Garcia, what are opportunities or resources for students to connect with Paws for Patrick?
Well, one of the things that we're going to be working on over time is a program called Turn Our Campuses Green. So the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in the past we have our sort of a young youth board, which is trying to promote campuses around the country. So it's something that it's a work in progress for us, and how young people can get more involved in, again, really spreading the word about emotional support animals and how they can help people. But so the main way right now is being active on social media and sharing. And I think really for anybody who has an animal, saying, posting themselves with their animal and how their animal helps them with their mental health.
All right. Now, oh, sorry. Give me a second here. And we are out of time. It's been so valuable having this conversation about the importance of emotional support animals and how Paws for Patrick is truly making a difference for people. A huge thank you to Daniel for sharing his expertise and passion with us today. Your work is truly inspiring, and we're so grateful for everything you've done to improve mental health for youth. Before we wrap up, I want to highlight a really exciting event coming up, the Paws for Patrick Gala. Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about this event?
Yeah, this is going to be at Pinstripes in Northbrook. So if anybody is in the area, there are tickets still available on the Paws for Patrick website. And they're going to be able to get some delicious food and mingle with people that also care about this issue. And then we have an incredible 80s cover band, the Modern Day Romeos, who are going to be playing. So if anybody likes 80s music, they honestly don't get any better than Modern Day Romeos. So, and there is an opportunity even for people who can't attend the gala, there will be some opportunity to bid on different auction items that are going to be coming up. Anything from a lake house in Maine, like a weekend there. So there's some really cool auction items that'll be up for that.
Very exciting. If you guys are interested, please make sure to check that out. And for anyone interested in learning more about Paws for Patrick, we'll share additional links after the session so you can get involved, access resources, or learn more about how to support their mission. Thank you all for tuning in today, and be sure to check out our next live on April 30th with my fellow intern Kayla as she interviews representatives from Sandy Hook Promise, one of them being a teen youth advisory board member for the organization. Additionally, May Niece is having their puppy therapy session on April 17th during all lunch blocks. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation, and we hope to see you soon. Bye!